So I'd finished The War of Three Gods, which was about the tragedy of Emperor Heraclius, the collapse of the Sassanid Empire, the rise of Islam. Then I also got through the history of the five families, the rise, decline, and resurgence of the mafia in the United States. And I was like, what am I going to read next? I have like 60 books on Audible that I haven't gone through yet, that I've just gone through sales or they've given out or something like that over the years. But do I really want to go through something I've already spent money on? Or do I just want to grab something new and put off reading all the books that are on the backlog? So I decided to go to Audible. I looked at my feed and this popped up in it. I'm like, Black Mist, that's the most generic sounding fantasy book of all time. But then I saw the series title, My Best Friend is an Eldritch Horror. And I immediately was like, okay, you've got my attention. That sounds awesome. That sounds like a wacky good time. And I looked at the cover, and the cover's like, okay, you got a mage school, you have this giant floating Yog Shoggoth looking thing, um, that's come straight from the abyss. And I just looked at that and I'm like, okay, this sounds interesting. This sounds like this could be wacky good time. So let's just read the description of this. Damien nearly ended the world. Now his mistake might be the only thing that can save it. Good things come to those who wait. Damien Vale didn't, and he ended up bound to an eldritch creature from beyond the reaches of space. It has lived since the dawn of time, seen the world born and destroyed countless times, and wants to be called Henry. Unusual companion or not, Damien was still determined to go to a mage college and study magic. He wants nothing more than to live a normal life as a researcher, but if Henry's true nature is revealed, he'll be killed. To top it all off, Damien's teacher is a madman from the front lines of war. His alcoholic dean suspects something is awry with his companion, and Black Mist might possibly be the worst school in history. Damien has to prevent the end of the world, but he isn't even sure he's going to make it through year one at Black Mist. So I read that title. I'm like, that sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like we're going to take a magic school. We're going to make it really wacky. We're going to maybe insert some interesting stuff. And so I was sold. Now, I don't know a ton about Actus or the background of this. From my very limited understanding, I think this was a story that he started doing for his patrons. And then it was really popular, so he decided to publish this book and do an audiobook, and there's a second one coming out. I actually enjoyed this so much I subscribed to his Patreon because he has like another 300 chapters or something up there. So the background to the story is, in this world, I don't think humans can naturally use magic. They have to contract with some sort of extraplanar creature. In magic, in D&D terms, you'd call them an outsider. So there's a wide range of different outsiders. There's like ones from the plane of light, the plane of darkness, the plane of the dead, all these different ones, and they have different elemental attributes. Now, he calls this a literary RPG. I really don't see how it is an RPG-based thing. The only RPG-based thing is they have bands that track their development of their magical skills and their physical fitness. And I guess that's technically like a magic, like a literary RPG thing, but to me it's just like you get grades in school. I'm sure in the army they record like what your accuracy is in shooting, what your skill set is, that kind of thing. And he seems to kind of forget about it part of the way through what I imagine would be book 2. So it's not even really that big a thing. I guess you have elemental affinities in schools of magic, but I digress. So everybody needs a companion in order to use magic. Damien, I believe at the start of the story, is 12. There's a ceremony you have to perform, and you summon a companion. So, for mysterious reasons that get talked about more later, Damien, when he does the ritual while his mom's out of the house, he winds up summoning an eldritch abomination from the void. The void creatures come into the world every couple thousand years and destroy it so that it can be reborn. Now, I think the creature's name roughly translates into he who devours all light, or he who extinguishes all light. But he eventually decides that he wants to be known as Henry, which is kind of an amazing name for an eldritch abomination. So he gets summoned. He's initially going to possess Damien and destroy the world. Damien winds up bluffing and blackmailing him, so they come to an agreement wherein Henry's not allowed to kill people or destroy the world without Damien giving him permission, and part of their souls start to merge. So as the series goes on, Damien becomes a bit more of a badass, and Henry becomes a bit more human-like. So they wind up making this pact, and Damien now has a eldritch abomination that could destroy the world as his companion. Now, something I like is, well, in a sense, this does make him overpowered. There's also the aspect that he really has no idea because he hasn't really gotten any training. A lot of the other kids at the school come from wealthier backgrounds, and his roommate went through like a bunch of Rocky style training out in the forest. So he gets his ass kicked quite a bit at the beginning just because he has no real idea how to fight. And I'm kind of okay with that. I don't mind there being a really powerful, almost overpowered protagonist, as long as there's some sort of like logical progression. So I'll give it credit for that. So people get assigned to a mage school. I'm not exactly sure what it's based on, but he gets assigned to Black Mist, which is like this shitty school. I think it's the smallest school, like on the edge of nowhere. And they get there, and the dean's like an alcoholic, and she just tells them to like fuck off. It doesn't bother to introduce them or anything. Their teacher is a lunatic from the front lines who has. I don't know if he's an alcoholic. I forget actually if he is. He probably is an alcoholic, but he clearly has like PTSD and is kind of completely out of his mind. I think one of the things that's really funny about the school is people are assigned basically an empty cave on the side of a mountain. I don't even think there was beds there. There might have been beds there, but it's just basically an empty cave with no lighting and a tiny bathroom with a shower, and that's all they're given. And they're given no direction. And the idea is they're supposed to use magic to kind of chisel out their own cave. So like blow holes in the mountain, use runes to create lights and stuff like that. They can buy various furniture items from the school store, things like that. Their school scholarship though does not include food. So if you don't have the money to purchase food, you have to eat the free meal, which is this toxic lump of waste. That's something that even Henry would turn down as being too disgusting. And we get a lot of funny scenes because Damien has some money, but he wants to save it on buying stat enhancing items. So he eats this disgusting slop basically all day, every day, until later on when they get some more money. The students are expected to go do quests or catch their own food and eat it rather than necessarily use the cafeteria. And particularly kind of for the first half of the first book, the real charm of it comes from the banter between Henry and Damien, where Henry basically is like, "Can we blow up the world now?" And Damien's like, "No, we aren't blowing up the world." He's like, "Please, can I just blow it up a little?" And he's like, "No, you can't blow up the world." And over time, Henry just kind of is very naturally curious. He's like, "You know what? It's been a long time since I blew up the world last. I wonder what's happened in the meantime." And he's just like, "Wow, all this history, all this magic was discovered." And he just starts kind of going through the library. Although he trolls Damien a lot by getting like pornographic books and just leaving them around his dorm room. Damien is given a room at the school's co-ed, so he shares it with a girl named Sylph, who's very clearly supposed to be his love interest in the long term. But that's kind of developing slowly. So at least initially, she's a character who's extremely fast, has very kind of assassin-like magic, but an extremely small magical core. So she mainly fights with knives and stuff, and she just, like I said, she's very quick. She uses invisibility, and she takes opponents down using partially non-magical means. So they kind of have a bromance going, which is pretty cool. Uh, Henry and Damien start to kind of get along more and more as the series continues. It turns out Henry is like part of a greater whole called Herald, which is like the thing that wants to destroy the world. And then it just kind of gets wackier and wackier because you have like alt other void creatures that are there. You have like the seeds of corruption. You have all these different like metaphysical entities that are trying to destroy the world, corrupt it, and save it. And meanwhile, they're trying to pass their classes. And it's just kind of funny because the school's just really shitty. Like it's weird. They don't seem to have core classes. They just get assigned to something kind of at random. And it's sometimes combat. I don't know. Their teacher's like a complete lunatic, but that's pretty funny too. Damien's abilities are kind of interesting. So he starts off with gravity magic, which is something I haven't really seen that much. So, like I said, he's not very skilled, but he's extremely like powerful. So he has these gravity spheres that he throws, and they kind of explode into like a gravity pulse, and they just pull people in and throw them violently like across the arena. And then he also get like growth and shrinking magic. One of my complaints with regards to the combat in this, so Damien's initial specialization is in runes, and he creates like a flashbang rune. Like it's on a piece of paper and he throws it and it creates an immense light and noise. And he has like an other runes that he writes on pieces of paper that are like giant bombs. And his professor's like, that's completely useless in combat. Why would a flashbang be helpful if you're fighting somebody? And there's like all these other runes he has like that create shields and stuff. But I don't think they take magic to use when they're being used because it's stored in advance. And I'm like, how is the ability to create like bombs or flashbangs or shields or any of this other stuff and just have them up your sleeve literally completely like useless? And it's just like they like his teacher just shits on him for specializing in runes. And I didn't really get that. So we have like some tournaments and stuff like that. And overall, I'm just going to say it has a very kind of amateurish fan fiction feel to it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's always nice to see something a little bit different because there's so much just generic, boring D&D ripoff, unreadable fantasy stuff out there. I'm okay with there being something that's kind of a little more amateurish or a little more fan fictiony, but has some wackiness, has some kind of creative ideas. I mean, if nothing else, every time I read the title, my best friend is a Eldrich horror. I got to admit, I do laugh. It is worth a good chuckle. So I would say I would recommend this book, if you like fantasy, if you like kind of wacky stuff, if you like RPGs, if you like something that's maybe a little bit different, or you're just kind of looking for an entertaining read. There's going to be a sequel to this coming out, I believe, in January. I actually subscribed to his Patreon, so I wanted to keep reading through this because there's a number more. There's like several hundred more chapters, so I'm sure there's going to be like 5 or 6 books at least in this series. And it doesn't really show any signs of kind of stopping. They're moving into, I guess, kind of a more meta plot at the moment, like with the fate of the universe. But so far it's been pretty consistent. I think the book is somewhat different than the story that's posted, kind of like a web novel versus light novel feel. It seems like it's about 70% the same. So I'm kind of curious to see what changes they've made to the chapters that I've read online. And just kind of, I'm not sure if they just clean it up, edit it to make it a little more systematic in terms of how one chapter flows into one another and a bit less episodic. But yeah, I'd recommend the book. I had a lot of fun with it. The audiobook's decent. That's all I have to say, guys. And we'll talk to you all soon.